Hello, everyone. This is the PRC meeting. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, project review committee meetings are being held virtually and no in-person attendance is permitted. PRC meetings are open to be viewed by the public, which is why we're broadcasting this on the city's YouTube page. Project review committee reviews major site plans and issues recommendations to the manager of zoning. The PRC is made up of a number of city staff members, as well as 3 urban design professionals from the community. The meetings are pretty informal and they consist of generally 2 parts. There's a description of the project by the applicant and a Q&A. And then the second part is deliberations by the committee and then a recommendation. So I'll start with introductions. I will call everyone by name to introduce yourselves. And then we'll start with staff and committee members, and then we'll move to the applicants. Sabrina. Oh, sorry, we have 2 Sabrinas. Staff Sabrina.
My name is Sabrina Boykin. I'm with the city's Architectural Services Division in the Department of Environmental Services.
Thanks. Donna.
Hi, I'm Donna Clements. I'm with Department of Environmental Sciences Street Design on behalf of the city engineer.
Ann.
Ann De Silva Tella with Neighborhood and Business Development Commissioner's Office.
Kevin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Kelly, and I'm the manager of the Office of City Planning.
Dana.
Hi, Dana Miller, Deputy Commissioner, Neighborhood Business Development.
Chris.
I'm Chris Snyder. I'm here on behalf of the manager of zoning.
Jim. It's Jim Yerington.
Jim Yerington,
Oh, yep.
Architect and non-city member.
Thank you. And Matt.
Matt Vanderwall, representative for the Director of Code Enforcement.
Anna.
Anna Keller, representative for the manager of zoning.
And do we have any other staff? I think I got everyone. So we can move to the consultant team and applicants. Betsy, did you want to go?
Hi, I'm Betsy Brugg. I'm an attorney at Woods Oviatt Gilman. I am here with the team for Store Space. We've got a couple other folks here, hopefully.
Bob.
Randy.
I'm Randy Seckler, principal with SWVR and for the architects on the project.
This is Glenn Harvey with Bergman. I'm a principal in our land development group. We're providing the civil engineering documents for the project.
And we have is it Bob and Sabrina?
Did they get in?
And I'm Bob Rice, Senior Vice President for Store Space.
And Sabrina Fernandez, Director of Pre-Construction for Store Space.
Thanks. So do you want to give us just a kind of quick explanation of the project, and then most of the conversation will probably be a Q&A with the committee. And I can bring up any drawings you like. I have them all up on my computer, but just let me know what to bring up.
Great. So this project is an expansion of an existing building. And it's going to be used for self-storage. The building currently, the address I think is Railroad Street, but the building actually doesn't sit on Railroad Street. What does it sit on? It sits on, what is this next street over there?
Hayward Avenue.
Thank you. I'm looking at the plan. It doesn't have it on here. So it actually sits on Hayward Avenue. So the intent is to do a nice addition, expansion of the building to, be functional for the self-storage operation. That's the business of Store Space, but also take into consideration all of the design criteria and considerations relative to the neighborhood in which it's located. And Randy has been working on the architecture, so I'm going to turn it over to Randy.
Okay. The proposed addition is 3 stories. It has a 1-story connection to the existing I'll call it 3-level building. There's 2 stories, about 2.5 stories above grade on the Railroad Street side. We are not intending to match the existing floor levels, as they are either 4 feet below grade or about 8 feet above grade. So our connection will have a connecting internally the 2 pieces of the project. And because of the size and area limits, there will be a firewall between the addition and the main building. The existing fence around the building will be removed. It will have an open access drive, parking and unloading areas to the east of the addition. And the addition is about 5 feet on the west side from the existing fence. I believe there's some question about who that fence belongs to. I guess we can talk about that as we move forward. And the entrance will be at the southeast corner of the building on the south side. There will be a leasing office there, toilet rooms, business office. The ground floor also has a grade level loading door, access to 2 elevators. And there's also along the Railroad Street side, we have added where the windows are a corridor that will be used as kind of a display feature, and that will have simulated roll-up doors for storage units, but they will actually have the door on the other side of the storage space. Those will be an accent color, and they're more intended for decorative purposes. Building also on the 3rd floor has another similar gallery that wraps around the southeast corner. Up one more, that's 2nd floor. Yep. And that will be similarly used for display. The rest of the building, other than a little bit of area for mechanical equipment, electrical and plumbing entrances, and fire stairs and elevators, is all divided up into storage units ranging from about 5 by 5 to 10 by 20, I think is the largest one. And the exterior elevations are currently a combination of decorative CMU, EIFS, and the red in the right side is intended to be insulated metal panel. Is there any explanation needed beyond that, Tom?
I think we can just move to questions and answers if the committee has a topic that they want to talk about a little bit more, if they have questions. So we can open it up to the committee. Or I can throw out topics for you.
What's the use in the existing building right now?
Jim, it's also a storage building. It has been a storage building, I'm going to say, for well over 10 years. It was previously purchased by a different owner in 2014. And at that time, the exit stair tower on the south side was added to the building in order to provide a second exit that was currently missing. And subsequent to that, on the north side of the building, there was a small addition made with a elevator. And there was a existing enclosed loading dock that was further enclosed with overhead doors so that it could be secured during, to get back a truck in and secure it.
So that's storage use, but it's not self-storage. Is that the difference in the use classification?
It is self-storage, Jim. Before 2014, before the building was sold, there was a portion of the building that was used for self-storage, and the balance of it was used for vehicle storage, boat storage, just about any large thing that would fit inside of it. But subsequent to that, it was all subdivided into self-storage space. So the entire existing building and addition, other than business office, is proposed self-storage.
Tom, so the expansion would be not of right as self-storage? I'm trying to remember your notes.
Right, so the existing use in the building is fine. It's already there. Currently, the public market village does not allow self-storage as a use. Originally, they were proposing more of like 2 buildings, which would have required a use variance. So we shifted to the new basic building being connected to the existing building, which allows them to apply for an area variance to expand that non-conforming use. So it's
Okay.
not a use allowed in the district, but they qualify for an area variance because of the existing building. So
And-
we do want to talk about that. They'll need a variance for the use, so we want to hear people's feedback on that as well.
And all the windows in the existing building are covered up?
There are no really significant exterior windows existing. They were infilled with masonry
Oh, okay.
probably 20 years ago.
I mean, you can read where windows would have been, but they have now apparently the red panels over everything.
Yes, but there's just masonry behind that.
Yep, okay. Used to be windows. Is this a concrete frame structure, Randy?
It is, except for the middle section in the back that has a sloped roof. You can see in that view. That is the oldest portion of the building, and that is actually heavy timber framed
Oh, okay.
with masonry exterior walls. That is the original building. So inside of the building where the additions were built around it, you can see the old CMU bearing walls. They're still in place.
Okay. Thanks.
So one of the other variances would be transparency. Did you guys want to have any questions on that? We'll have deliberations later, but now's a chance to kind of discuss with the applicant. And then Randy, I think you did explain, I was a little confused originally, but there'll be a corridor behind these windows, between the windows and the storage units. Is that correct?
Correct.
If we jump back for a second, Tom, to the
Sure.
street view,
Mhm.
is the U-Haul storage still part of it? Clearly, there must have been U-Haul rental at one time, whenever Google drove by. Are there still going to be U-Haul trucks parked out there?
That one I'm going to have to defer to Bob and Sabrina for.
Okay, go ahead. With the question was regarding the trucks.
Yep, U-Haul rental.
Based on the current plan, we're not planning to have a rental operation at the property because the expansion is going to utilize more space than what is currently there. And I'm not even certain if we currently have a rental operation. I know that people have the ability to drop off a truck, I think, at the present time, but there's not plans for us to have a truck rental operation at that property at the moment.
And that
Okay.
will be what, excuse me?
I said, okay.
Yes, and that would be modified also to be able to make the turning truck points of the any type of heavy duty vehicles. So we just want to make sure that whichever items that we have in that section of the properties, they do not interfere with the turning points or turning radius of the trucks.
And for fire access.
Correct.
Sure. I totally understood. Obviously, there's going to be fire code implications to the new construction. I guess I was just more asking based on the street view photo, it looks like there was trucks being stored in the parking lot. So that's another consideration.
That valid consideration, and we do not plan to have truck storage on the property.
As far as the transparency issue that Tom brought up, Tom, can you summarize like what is the requirement and how close are they to the requirement?
Which requirement is that?
Transparency.
Okay, let me pull this up. So the requirement is 70% between 2 and 8 feet. The site is a little strange in that there's a significant slope to it. The original calculation here, 46%, is from the top of the grade, but we would use more of an average of the site. So I think the rough estimate was like 25 to 30 that I came up with. If you were considering this 0, generally the windows on a building we want at pedestrian level. This site again is a little strange because of the grading. So we're pretty far off 70% no matter how you calculate it.
Okay. And even if there was sufficient transparency, I mean, essentially the spirit of our transparency regulations is to promote a pedestrian environment that has visibility into commercial spaces so that you could see retail and restaurant activity and that sort of thing to promote sort of a pedestrian vibrancy. But what exactly, even if there was full transparency here, what exactly is it providing visibility into? It's just a corridor, or what exactly is behind those windows?
Well, it is a corridor. There would be, what was being proposed was decorative metal panels that would look like the doors to the storage units, except they would be red or some accent color. The difficulty is we don't want people to have the pedestrian experience of looking in and seeing piles of people's stuff and old rugs and boxes and that thing that they might have in a storage space. And you don't want spandrel glass, you want transparency there. So this was an attempt to address that through another means. We certainly, given the grade of the site, would probably want to drop those windows down almost to the floor level to increase the amount. There was also some confusion, quite honestly, on my part. I thought the requirement was 40%, not 70%. So that's one reason why there's significantly under 70%. But Kevin, your question, I think, is really probably the main issue at hand is the view or pedestrian experience acceptable?
It brings up a good point, which goes back to the use not really being allowed here either, is that we have a public market village district that we want vibrant, active uses, people, pedestrians, activity. So that's probably one of the reasons why a storage building doesn't have really any of those things, no pedestrian activity on the sidewalk. So that's probably one of the issues and things that people are concerned with on our site plan committee.
And along those lines, so Tom just kind of described the current zoning and the sort of the purpose statement of the district, but I'm curious for Randy or Bob or anyone from the applicant team, if any of you have reviewed the different community plans that we have in place for this area that speak to, the character that we're looking to achieve and whether or not this is consistent with the vision expressed in those community plans.
I've scanned through the previous plans. I don't know if I have seen the most recent one. I believe there has been a more recent version that was issued.
Which one are you referring to?
For the public market village district.
Okay, yeah, so there's, in addition to that, there's the East Main Arts and Market District study. which provides a lot of recommendations around this. And then, and most importantly, the Rochester 2034 Comprehensive Plan, which has a future land use plan incorporated into it. I'm not sure if anyone from the team has had a chance to look at that.
I have not. I can't speak for Glenn or Bob.
We have not seen that.
Excuse me. So although we haven't seen it personally from store space, when it comes to the building design, we always want to do something that is very personalized to the location that we're going through. For instance, if the goal is to increase the pedestrian experience whenever they pass by the store, instead of having some sort of four doors that shows the storage, we can have a beautiful sketch of the skyline of Rochester, for instance, or having something more personalized to the city. So it is more aesthetically pleasant to whoever walks in front of the property. And I would be able to prepare some sort of renderings or schematic representations with Mr. Roundy to show that intent, if that's okay with you.
Just throwing this out there. The new building is fronting on Railroad Street, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Has there been any consideration to a mixed use building? So storage on the upper floors and then some other sort of commercial space on the first floor?
That's not their business model. In all honesty, you know, I understand what you're saying, because I have been following the comprehensive plan. We are dealing with a situation where there is a pre-existing non-conforming use. So I understand that, you know, there's definitely some challenges. We'll have to take another look, but I think that the focus has been on really working on that engagement with the street, but the use is, you know, it's self-storage, so it presents some challenges.
Yep, like I said, just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and there have been other, comments that this is the gateway to the market too. This is almost Main Street. So even more, concerned that it's not necessarily matching with the other uses, the allowable uses in the district further down Railroad. So the location of the property is another concern to some people, I think, as well.
Mhm.
Can we talk about the loading? If anybody has questions or if you guys want to explain the loading, I think based on the code, these spaces are a little short, but do you feel that there's enough space to pull in and out? Multiple, maybe moving trucks could be in this location at once. I guess just tell us a little bit more about that.
This is Glenn with Bergman. I believe one of the plans that we submitted showed the proposed truck turns. And based on input and experience from Store Space with their operations, I don't think they have the scenario where you've got a tractor trailer, which I believe is the overall length, the 55-foot length, sitting into one of those spots that somebody comes up with a U-Haul truck or pickup truck, unload their things that they're wishing to store, and then they leave. So Sabrina and Bob, maybe you can speak to the operations, but that's the scenario that we modeled.
That's correct. I think I want to add a word into a prefix word to the self-storage. We are what's considered light self-storage with an average unit size of 100 square feet. So, the average unit being 10 by 10, 100 square feet, which could store, a college student's furnishings or the furnishings of somebody that's, in between homes or something like that. And our average customer is either coming in their own vehicle or as Glenn mentioned, they're renting a U-Haul or a Ryder truck that's on the average a 14-foot truck. Of course, there are some people that get as large as a 24-foot truck, but that's the average unit. So, and they're relatively very light traffic facilities, because this is not like a drive-up storage place where you have these large contractor kind of vehicles and pickup trucks and trailers. We don't have that typically on this type of facility.
This is Chris. How many trips a week would you say for those larger trucks?
Excuse me?
How many trips a week would you say, just to give a rough estimate or an idea of how many trucks come in and out of your?
I wouldn't even, on a weekly basis, it'd be tough. We have, how many units are in this facility? What's our square footage? Gross, do you remember?
We have about 400 units.
I mean, let's say a monthly basis. I'm just trying to.
Yeah,
get
on a
an
monthly,
idea of
okay, so on a monthly basis, I mean, if we're looking at a 6 to 8% turn rate on a monthly basis on 400, what is it, 400 units total?
About that, correct.
So
100.
you think 100, 150?
I believe-
6%'s even high, but if I figure high.
I
6 versus
believe that
24.
is very low because we're a low traffic location. So it would be about 100 top strips a month.
Even
And
if it
that's
was
on the
200
heavier
or something,
side.
yeah.
Correct.
For these trucks, these large trucks, you're saying?
Oh, no, not for the large.
No, not for
trucks.
large.
That was my question. In terms
Yeah,
of these
large
larger
trucks is an
trucks.
It's an exception to the rule.
That's an exception to the rule, and we're typically not set up to handle a, are you thinking about large trucks like a Mayflower Moving type truck company or something like that, or Atlas Van Lines?
I'm talking about what you've provided us here. So I see there's 2 trucks here and that there's trucks that will come and go. How many trips a month do you expect for this facility, or based on what you know from previous store space facilities?
They're showing a,
Bob, we're showing that's like a 24, that's a overall 30-foot long truck. So that's your 28-foot or 24-foot from U-Haul. So the bigger trucks.
yeah, it's a pretty
So-
large truck. I mean, a few trips a week, maybe with something like that, if that. I mean, most of the folks and the facility's there, and I'm speaking from experience, and the facility's there in your community now. So it would be synonymous with what's going on now. You might see a few of those a week. Most of the people come and go in a car and a U-Haul trailer or one of those small, like one of those small U-Haul trucks. I think they're 14 feet, the ones that I've seen.
However, we can get that.
I can get you the data.
Yes, we can get
Yeah.
a report for you from our operations team.
Yeah,
And
that's
this
fine.
was-
I was just trying to know offhand, like what you would expect. I mean, because that's part of that goes along with the use, right? In terms of intensity of this use in this area on this street, how many trucks are going to be going through there on a monthly basis. So yeah, that's something, just an average. You said a few trips a week. That's good enough for me.
Yes, it's very nominal, actually, the amount of trips that the larger trucks make. So
Thank you.
And I would emphasize it's a grade level unloading door into the addition. Full-size Atlas van or something like that would probably go to the other side of the existing building off of Hayward Street, where there is a elevated dock and an enclosed dock that they could back into and have direct access to the elevator that's right next to that dock. And those units in the existing building, some of those are larger than 200 square feet. There's some larger units. They would be more likely the ones that a large truck would be delivering to, not this side of the building.
Okay, that's good information. I think part of the thought was if these trucks are kind of in this maneuvering area and say there are 3 or 4 there at once, you could have an issue, but you're saying there's not going to be that many at once, and larger trucks might not even be on the side of the building anyway.
Right.
Okay.
That area at the top of the drawing where it says park 30 by 10 semi-trailer. There are no dock doors there any longer. There used to be at one point, but they have been infilled.
All right. Any questions about, there's another variance that we may be able to deal with. They're very close anyway. You're not supposed to have ephes under 4 feet on a street frontage. I think I measured that this area is just a little below or below 8 feet on other facades. does anyone have questions or concerns with that? Or is that something you guys think you could tweak just to stay out of that, asking for that variance, I guess?
Yeah, we
what are-
can
what are
make
those
sure
thoughts?
it's masonry up to 4 feet,
Okay, so maybe that's an easy one to tweak.
but it's 8 feet on the sides, correct?
Right. So, I mean, it depends on your grade too. You're probably just running into the issue over here. I'm not sure if you're at 8 feet up by the time you get back here. Okay, are there any other questions from the committee or anything else that the applicant team wants to tell us?
I just received an answer from our operations team on our current and then our estimated number of trips per month with that particular property. And the estimate going forward is between 15 to 18 trips per month with people that actually come with a truck. And currently it's 8 to 10.
Okay, thank you.
And one of the other comments that I'm seeing here, and I'll let Sabrina opine to this because she's actually involved in the design, but I'm being told that the unit sizes in the new edition are actually being downsized. That's what I'm being told here.
So yes, that is correct. One future development that we're going to have in the existing building is resizing a couple of units that we have in a larger scheme to get them down to 100 square feet per unit as well. So that will reduce also significantly the type of market that we're going to be targeting in that area, generating less traffic as well.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions before we have another case on our agenda? We would move forward to that, and then we would do deliberations at the very end. All right, well, thanks for joining us and kind of clarifying some of our questions. So this group will create a recommendation to the manager of zoning, and we'll follow up with you on their recommendation and kind of talk about if there are any tweaks or changes to be made and how we'll move forward to the next step, which is the zoning board.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
for
you so
coming.
much.
Yeah, if you have
Thank
any
you.
further questions,
very
feel free
much.
to contact me, Tom.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So I see we have Randy. Let me pull up the drawings of Mama Sans, and then I'll give you a quick spiel that I explained a little bit on email, but let me pull up the drawings first.
Dave Bianetti just joined you.
Oh, great. Perfect timing. Okay, can everyone see the Mama Sans building? This is 1400 Mount Hope.
Yes.
So this came through site plan review a while back. This committee had some recommendations, reviewed design. They made some improvements to the building. The new restaurant moved in. We have a new drive-through in the back. But then the owners installed some kind of blackout windows on a couple of the facades. We decided it made sense to bring it back to this group because it's what has been built basically doesn't match what this group saw and approved. So they'll need to go for some variances, but first we wanted to bring it here to get your feedback. And I'm going to let Randy probably give a better explanation than I did, but I have some pictures that we can pull up and a drawing as well. Thought I saw Randy. I think he's muted.
Now,
Oh, there we go.
there we go. I think my wife was just sharing that button. Yeah, so in the process of construction, our original intent here was to build a loft inside for storage. The price to do this was way above what the owner had intended to spend. We eliminated the loft. What they decided to do was create a room in that southwest corner.
Can you back off of your microphone, maybe? It's like really kind of.
It's like,
Yeah.
How about back here? I can talk quieter.
It's a little better.
All right.
quality
So-
issue, it's very fuzzy.
The owners decided to create a storage room on the first floor, and they had someone come in and put a blackout film on those last two windows on the west facade, two at the very south end there where the cursor is now. And they decided that they wanted to put some advertising in the building with their telephone number for their drive-up window, so you can see them to the north end of that facade. They blacked out that, and they put some advertising on that. And they did a couple around the corner as well. You can see that one's on the north facade, where that window decal is on there, and a similar thing on the south facade. Almost. Should be one more with that south facade. Well, there's a very similar window on the south side, exact same size. There it is. You can see that one there. So those windows on the south, there's actually shelves inside of there, stacked up boxed product, some storage, some equipment, etc. Their solution was to block out the windows. They would like to maintain it as such. The requirements for transparency between 2 foot and 8 foot. Unfortunately, this building was built, I believe, in the late 70s, early 80s. Those requirements didn't exist at the time. Those window sills are higher than 2 feet, so I do have a disadvantage in losing about a foot of glass along that stretch. Obviously, we don't want the cost of replacing the windows. So my owners, my clients would like to go to the zoning board of appeals to ask for a variance for transparency and for the signage area based on what they created here.
Okay, thanks, Randy. So do people have questions on the two issues? Would be the size of the window signs. You're allowed to have 25% per window, and then the actual blacking out of the windows.
So
Is there a floor plan that explains what Randy's explaining?
I didn't give Chris, I'm sorry, I didn't give Tom a floor plan. You may have one from previous, from the original approval.
Yeah, I probably have an old one in here. Let's find it.
But Randy, I don't know why, but your microphone's coming across like NASA in 1950.
Yeah. Right, it could be my basement location. It's very possible it's my basement location. I'm not sure. Don't tell anybody. I haven't installed an egress window, and I just, started working here in the basement last March. And one of those days.
Yep. I hear you.
Actually, I'm more considering maybe around April next year, I'll just be done. So you don't see it on here because it was added in after the fact. It's in the floor plan drawing you have right there. It's in the lower right corner. We simply walled off an area that roughly followed that soffit that you saw on there, and that became a storage room instead of having a loft area in the back above the kitchen. We see a soffit dashed in. That first bay on the windows on the lower right-hand corner right there. Yep. Yeah. So, and that storage room runs back to just before the exit door that goes out to the patio on the side there.
Did that space used to be dining space before they converted it?
Yeah, it was dining space previously. They just decided they had way too much dining space. They switched up the model of the restaurant. They're no longer doing table service, and there are plenty of tables in there, but they're doing it more like on a Panera style, where they're doing you order at the counter and then the meals served to you on a tray, and that. They just decided that it would be simpler for them to reduce this seating area and have that storage space on the first floor rather than build the loft above the kitchen. And granted, the storage area is a little bit more serviceable there. It's got a full height ceiling. And then just so you're saying, the service area is not completely walled off. The walls go to 8 feet, and it's open ceiling up above that. What we did inside is we left all of the ceiling joists exposed and painted out everything, and then hung the ductwork underneath those ceiling joists. So inside it feels like one big space, just with a divider in it.
The glass is still there. There's just an opaque black film put on it. I mean, if you took off the black film, would it be windows again? I think maybe Randy froze.
I'm sorry. If we put the film off, on stacked up. That likes to buy in bulk, so there's quite a bit of product in there.
So one of the things the code allows you to just use blinds, like a lot of businesses have, well, it looks like a window, but there's, blinds on the interior, preventing everyone from seeing kind of what's inside. So that would be an alternative that the zoning board's going to ask about too.
It'd be a hard one to explain because they put blinds on the other 3 windows, and they had already done this blackout before they were instructed that it wasn't legal, permitted. And they said, "Well, we spent the money on it. It doesn't look bad." If you look at that, I know aesthetics is a personal choice. It doesn't bother me. I think the building came out really nice.
Yeah, I think this is Dave. I just happen to be one of those guys with retail facilities, especially restaurants, where I think clear glass is absolutely crucial. And that's why Drapery Industries has such a flourishing business, because they sell excellent draperies. I was at a Panera the other day, crystal clear glass, could see the people inside, made sure it was open. And then when the sun began to come in that direction, one of the people that worked there just lowered the Mecca shade and 95%, and it was beautiful, and I just do not like, that's just me, I do not like tinted glass on any retail facility, and much less the zoning, which in this area, it's not acceptable. So I'm against it personally.
Yeah, I would agree. And just to point out, the requirement for transparency is not a personal aesthetic sort of subjective kind of choice that's put into the code. It's about the public realm and the street experience of pedestrians. So this isn't necessarily adding to that. But Tom, I just had a question about process, as I'm not familiar with how this plays out. But from the time that a project like this gets to approve, and then to when it's actually constructed, and if there's a change like this, is that change and was this change communicated to the city, or is this sort of a discovered after the fact kind of thing?
I think it's an after the fact.
It wasn't after the fact.
It's tough because, it went through site plan review. There was a design review, and it went to PRC. So other projects, if there's a change, sometimes we just amend the site plan if it's not something too significant. But in this case, we felt that everyone had already seen the design, kind of agreed that it was, as proposed, and then the change happened. So that's why we wanted to see what this group thought before going for the variances.
To Dave's point, if you put blinds in there, just normal Venetian type blinds even, and adjusted them, so light was able to come into the space, which seems to me might be an advantage rather than just having the windows blocked out, but you couldn't really see in. I mean, that would be something you could just set it and leave it, and it would be better than the black, dead eye look.
You're not telling me anything I don't know.
Yeah. Also, so Randy, the signs at the doors, those are on opaque black too. I mean, that must be nasty from the inside. I mean, you come up to the door and you can't see through it. It's be perfectly easy to do exactly the size of it is another discussion, but you could perfectly easy do the messaging lettering there and leave the transparency of the doors.
Yeah, that's not the door. That's a window into the vestibule. The door is around the side on the north facade.
Right, there's another one, isn't there?
There's to the side of the door.
Okay, yeah.
You see the aluminum door there.
But I mean, you could do the same thing on the clear glass with an applique and have the same message, and it just wouldn't be as nasty from the inside as those blackout things.
All discussions I've had.
Yeah. Well, like Dave said, I guess that's what I think. It would be easy to do a better version of this that wouldn't be as problematic, I think.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's blinds or that kind of blacked out treatment, essentially what that communicates to somebody walking by, whether they're a customer or not, is that it's probably best that that person doesn't know what's going on inside that building. And that's just not really positively contributing to the pedestrian environment here, to communicate that message, whether it's covering up storage or on the left side, the case they're, covering up the vestibule.
So any other questions? Otherwise, we can move to deliberations. I think we would do this one first so that we can let Dave contribute and then let him go because he's not going to be in on the other project deliberations. So final questions.
I just have one question. I thought I heard the answer, but it was really hard, unfortunately, to understand everything that Randy was saying. But on these panels that are blacked out, are they actual panels that replace the glass, or are they a film on the glass?
Film on the glass. It's a film.
Okay.
They can just simply be peeled off, which is what I suggested. But my clients said they've spent money on it, they want to keep it.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you, Randy.
Yeah, I get that. I've spent money on things at home that I want to keep, and my wife says get rid of it. So anyway, there are realities to living in a district, and this is one of those districts. I don't have a problem with the building. I think Randy did a nice job on that, and I'm glad that they relocated. But codes are codes, and in this district, it's what it is. And so we need to be good neighbors, and they should be a good neighbor. So there are great ways to make sure that everybody is happy here. And I think, the city can work with your client to make sure that they're happy, the city's happy, and they're busy, and making a lot of money. That's the hope.
You're correct.
All right, so we'll transition quickly into deliberations. We're kind of already there anyway, but we would like a recommendation both related to the windows. If you have a recommendation where some are okay and some are not, that's fine. If you want to make a blanket recommendation, that's fine. And then the size of the signage. So you're allowed 25% per window sign. So in theory, this could be, I don't know, this big, maybe half the size or a third of the size. So we want comments on both the blackouts in general and the size of those window signs.
Tom, is that per window or is that per wall of windows?
It's per window, so you can't take all of your window square footage and then cover one. It's just an individual window can have a small, sign in it. So they could have, technically they could have multiple ones as long as they're, kind of little signs.
So in this view that we're looking at right now, could they, for example, take Mama San's and the picture of whatever that is, it looks like maybe a bowl or something, off of that area and leave the rest of it easy to go and the phone number? Would that get it to the point, or does the whole thing stay, but it would all have to just be smaller?
I think the whole thing would be smaller because we're really just looking at this window. It doesn't really incorporate.
So you're not counting that one at the bottom
Yeah.
either, okay.
To clarify that, Tom, if it were lettering on a transparent window, then the area of the letters would be all that we're counting towards the 25%, right?
Right, yeah, so if this was clear, we would just make like an imaginary, box around it. So in that way, they could black out 25% of the window with the sign, or they could do just this, peel and stick on signage as long as it was smaller.
I don't think you could read it if it was any smaller. It would, the intent is for people driving by to be able to read it. I guess you could just leave the phone number and take everything else off, but you would kind of lose some of the message.
As far as a
Following on
recommendation,
Dana's point, you have Mama San's principal sign and then you're repeating it on the window.
On the window, yeah.
Kind of redundant.
Exactly, yeah. I would take that off and leave the phone number and I can't even read what that says under the phone number, so maybe.
I think it's their website, but
Oh,
to your
maybe
point.
It says mamasan.com.
But to your point, yeah, if you're just trying to get it for people driving by, the phone number is probably.
I personally don't have any problem with the signage if the window were transparent.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that also. I do agree that having Mama San's again, which mirrors the sign, the very nice sign above it, I think it's redundant, but I could live with that if the window was transparent.
I think the major issue here is just the blackout areas, right?
Right.
Those are typically, they're just, the code doesn't allow it. Now going over the 25% or whatever is allowed per window panel itself is one thing to look at, but the blacking out the windows, I think, is the biggest issue here in my mind. And to everyone's point, who I think probably half of us had in our head, why don't you just put shades up? That I think is a really good point and valid point.
Same thoughts on all of so there's 3 window signs, one on each side, one on the front. Or I guess maybe someone should make the recommendation and then we can adjust it. If someone wants to make a motion.
Is there one also on the back side where the drive-through window is or not?
That I do not know. I don't think I have pictures of the back.
All right, no problem.
Randy says no.
Okay.
They could knife
And on the front where we were just looking at, the west side, I thought in the previous use of this building, I thought that was a door also. I thought they had 2 doors into the vestibule. Was that door removed and replaced with a window, or was it removed and replaced with something else? Randy's shaking his head no, so.
It's exactly as it was.
Okay. Great. Oh, it looks much better now. Okay.
Whoops. We're rocketing into space.
Yeah, where did you bring us, Tom?
And we're back to Railroad Street now.
Getting there.
I'll recommend that the windows have to meet the transparency requirements, but that the signage can go for approval.
I'll second that.
So what signs would you recommend get approved then?
The window signs.
Right, on clear glass rather than on the blackout?
Yep.
And without Mama Sans, just the rest, so it meets the percentage?
I personally don't care about that part.
Yeah.
So that's kind of up to the zoning board of appeals, right? We're just deciding if it's okay for the design, in my mind. I
Yep.
guess we can point out that and see if that's even appropriate.
And the blackout of the storage room?
Yeah, to remove that.
Yep.
So all the black areas, right, Matt? That's what your motion was. All the blackout areas of the windows, but to
Right.
keep the decals, if they wanted to put decals of their same signage within the same size of what that signage is on the windows, but that can be kept.
Sounds good.
Right.
Agreed.
Okay, let's take a vote. I'm just gonna go down the participant list with who is a voting member. So first I have Chris.
Yep.
Dana,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Matt,
Yep.
Dave,
Yep.
Kevin,
Yes.
and I think those are our voting members. Okay, so we will send a more formal recommendation to Randy, but it sounds like at least it's kind of a in-between compromise for everybody. Okay, so let's move back to the original project and we can let Dave and Randy go. And then we can kind of deliberate on that project and talk a little bit about those details.
See
So
y'all.
does someone
Make
wanna
it easy.
Bye.
Bye.
Does someone want to start us off with, I don't know, big ticket items, concerns, thoughts?
I'll jump in to start with. I think my impression here is that you're building a new building fronting on Railroad Street. So I think considerations have to be made there that even though the building that sits way back off the street is storage and pre-existing, the new building doesn't have to be only storage if that's not allowed.
What do other people think about that?
Well, it's, you know, you heard the lawyer say what you expected her to say, which is it's not their business model, they're a storage company. But, you know, it would be perfectly easy to, if they were to consider mixed use, to do a strip of space along with their offices at the periphery that would, you know, activate that and then just have all the storage behind it. I mean, it really, I think you could modify maybe 15% or less of the floor space to mixed use and it would have a real impact on the facades. I mean, I guess I was puzzled by the approach to the facades. You know, if this was an architecture student doing it, honestly, I would talk with them, I would be puzzled. So the original building, you know, the old part of the building, it was cool to hear the part of its wood frame, but the concrete frame part, it's a common way of doing it. And I mean, it seems to me that the design would benefit from simplification. And if you had, you know, an expression of structural bays like the original building and you worked the windows into that and then made the material transition down towards grade where you want to. I mean, maybe the corner of the building is highlighted with this red metal panel material. Okay, you know, I guess maybe. But I really just don't understand the way the rest of it's articulated, and the windows, you know, the way they are placed in the concrete block. Breaking the water table line isn't the happiest thing in the world. So I'm just puzzled by it. I don't know. What do the rest of you all think?
It looks like a storage building.
I agree with you, Jim. I think that the design is a little confounding in that respect from just purely from an architectural standpoint. I guess I still want to get some clarification maybe from Tom or other zoners about what's actually in play here. And is use a valid discussion at this point, or is because this is extending a existing non-conforming that it's not in play? If it is in play, I have some serious concerns. But if it's not in play, then they're moot points.
Yeah, I think it's in play. They have to go to the zoning board, and part of a major site plan review is getting feedback from this group. It tends to usually be more design focused, but it doesn't have to be. Really, everything's on the table for you to discuss and create your recommendation. And then zoning board will have the preliminary findings as well as your recommendation, and they'll take that into account. So we wouldn't deny this project based on your feedback, but zoning board has more power to kind of grant certain variances. So I think it's helpful to them for sure.
But they essentially do need a use variance here, even though it's an extension of a existing non-conforming?
No, they need an area variance. So the use is not permitted, but because they're expanding the existing use, they qualify for an area variance, but it's for the use. So it's pretty strange if you think of it that way. But it's not a use variance where they have to show financial hardship. They have some lower standards to meet in order to expand the existing use.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, if it is in play to some extent, I'll just say that, you know, Railroad Street in particular is an emerging, pretty special place in our city. We're a really challenged market in a lot of ways, and trying to get mixed use retail vibrant areas up and running is a real challenge in the city. And Railroad Street is one of the few bright spots that the market has really showed up and created some really great activity and pedestrian activity and restaurants and entertainment and playing off the public market and such. So this would not be adding to that activity. This would be subtracting from that activity. It would be vacuous essentially, and not really contributing to what's happening on Railroad Street. It's a really complicated situation because it is a single parcel, but it would be great if that was subdivided off and sold to somebody that could handle doing mixed use development. That would add a lot more to Railroad Street. And from the, you know, going back to our adopted plans, you know, the East Main Arts and Market study, and certainly Rochester 2034, as it pertains to updating our zoning code, would not support this use in any way, shape, or form. So purely from a use perspective, this is not a great proposal. But then we have to deal with the technicalities of you know, their situation here.
So does the use say there was a way to line the front of it with small commercial or office? Does the use become acceptable or more acceptable because we're dealing with the street frontage, or overall, you know, we don't want this to expand in any way? I guess those are two different options.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, you could probably speak to that better than me in terms of how you interpret the existing regulations. But in terms of our future land use plan and our vision for this area, I think you could kind of spin that to accommodate that sort of a mixed use building like Matt had suggested at the beginning. That, you know, self-storage isn't great, but if you got a first floor commercial use that's really the main thing that interacts with the public realm, I think that would be a real positive addition. Obviously they're saying it's not in and they're programmed to do that sort of thing, but it's not necessarily in our program to accommodate that either. That's not necessarily our purview here.
Any other thoughts on the use concept? How about detail? So let's deal with these separately because we can have specific recommendations. So I guess transparency does relate directly to that. If there were to be some sort of commercial on the first floor, then maybe the transparency could increase. But what do you guys think as proposed with this transparency on the front? And then maybe comment on that interior. I think it's like a 3-foot wide hallway behind the windows.
Can you pull the image down a little bit so we can see the other facade too, or shrink it? Yeah. Well, I don't think you would necessarily break into song if you were walking down the street and looked through those windows and saw replicated overhead doors. You know, I think Sabrina kind of rushed in and said that she could make us feel good with a skyline view through there or something. I mean, the idea of letting the window show something, I understand, but I don't think that the overhead doors painted red or, you know, at that rate, you might as well just stick fake overhead doors on the outside of the building. I think it's still a problem. So if this was to be approved and if they did have that corridor, I think something better than red overhead doors at minimum you would look for.
Go to 206 North Ave in Webster on Google.
Yeah, let's get away from those blacked out windows on Mount Hope. Fast as possible. Poor Randy must have taken a lot of headache pills.
No, it's not Webster Ave, it's Webster, New York. There you go. Yep.
Yeah, go in front of those windows because that's what they're talking about.
Well, it's interesting, Matt, that is a concrete frame looking building too. I mean, isn't that nice? The old building back there. It's just so simple and just the modularity of it rather than the end cap thing and the spotty windows and so forth. Yeah, I mean, these windows, there you go. You know, well, you know, is anybody breaking into song seeing those red doors in there? I don't know.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. It's almost like be what you are. You're a storage building, right? There's a lot of different things going on with the building itself. And if it's going to be a storage building, you know, there's not putting all of those additional bells and whistles on it doesn't really do anything for it. Is that kind of what we're getting at? Or that you were getting at, James?
Yeah, I think so, Chris.
We're definitely seeing a lot of storage proposals. So some of the concern is that, you know, they shouldn't be going in a district like this where they're not allowed, where it's, you know, there's high-end furniture stores and restaurants and brewery and distillery and activity. You know, our city has a lot of industrial areas or, you know, M1 areas. There are a lot of places where it is allowed.
Right.
So should we go out of our way to allow it somewhere where it's not allowed, or, you know, allow it to expand? Obviously the existing business is fine where it is.
I mean, obviously they just want us to say yes, as everybody does, right? But I mean, to Kevin's point and yours about the district, maybe there's an opportunity there for them that they're really not exploring, and they could choose they could choose a tenant mix that's not that difficult to coexist with storage behind. But it would certainly make a tremendous difference to the, entry process of coming into the neighborhood on that street if you had a lively facade with some people working there and doing things and not just storage or red doors.
Yeah, to that point, I think it's a really great opportunity because that's an area that people would want to move one of their retail businesses, right? Like that's a hot area right now. Yeah, I agree with
this
that.
facade, I guess we'll see a mix, but I think we'll probably see more of this facade from Main Street, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll get an angle because the building will be here. So.
Well, it's certainly pretty exposed as you come around the corner.
I mean, if they're not in the business of being commercial tenants, in addition to running a storage operation, then they're just not in that business. I don't think that they're gonna, go along with that sort of compromise approach as much as we would like it. They'll probably flat out turn that down, which is understandable. That's just not their business model. But that, fundamentally is that question of whether it's an appropriate use there. And when it comes to the transparency, I mean, they basically said, we designed it this way because we don't really want people looking into our building. So is that the kind of building that we want on Railroad Street where we don't want people looking into it and they shouldn't know what's happening inside? It's totally inappropriate use.
The short answer is no, it doesn't fit the vision of the city of Rochester. And that's kind of the end of discussion. It's not what they want to hear. It's not their business, their business model, but that is the gateway to the market. And there is a lot of interesting things going on Railroad Street. We want to encourage more interesting development. This is not the project that's going to do that. And that's kind of the long and short of it right there. They like putting lipstick on a pig. You just can't. I get their business model, and I think it's a great one because there's a lot of college students, little 10 by 10. I don't want to deal with my stuff. I'm going to dump it in there. But it seems like there are better places to do that.
Do you think the market in this neighborhood is college students though?
No, but I think is there other, if you're a college student from a different city and you're looking for some place to put your stuff, it's close enough, right?
If you live in neighborhood of the arts.
Yeah, or wherever you live. It's not, I don't have to move it back to Pennsylvania or California or overseas. It's across town, no matter what college, even if you're in Head, well, I guess if you're in Head, right? Stretch, but you know what I mean.
Well, we're also a community, unfortunately, or a population of people who just don't like to throw our stuff away. I mean, a lot of these units are full of stuff that people, they've converted their basement to a rec room. They don't have an attic and they've got stuff. It's got to go somewhere. So
I guess
it ends up in
Dana,
one
I
of these
was
storage units.
wondering with all the Center City apartment development, if that might be creating some market for folks who, again, they don't want to throw out all their stuff, but they just don't have room in the apartment. They may be sharing with other people, and nearby is this facility where they can stow some things.
There's also, if you're into any kind of outdoor activity and you live in an apartment, you just need some place to put your camping gear. I have a kayak, I have a bike, I have, whatever.
Yeah. It's $100 a month, and that's, it's not that big a deal for a lot of people. And a one like this, where it's climate controlled, then you don't have to worry about your stuff getting ruined.
Right.
Sorry, my question got everyone off track. I think we were talking about transparency, my bad.
Yeah, we were. Thank you, Anna. So that I understand, I thought he said something about those windows on that blank hallway perhaps being lowered because the height they are now wouldn't really allow a view in. And he said they would perhaps take the windows all the way down to the floor. Did I hear that correctly, or am I making that up?
Yeah, I think so. To get closer to the requirement.
Yeah,
I
because
think
I'm
they
not
would
sure
try and do
what that
larger
does
windows.
to that view. Does that take them down to the level of the other windows to the right?
Yeah,
I think
it would
so.
be close. The dotted line is the floor line.
Right.
They can't go
You know,
much, they can't go further than that.
Proportionally, I think the windows would look worse longer. I mean, it kind of start to look Victorian.
Yeah, I don't know that they would be any longer. I think he just meant they would move them down.
Oh, move the head down too.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
All right. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
So do you think you have enough to kind of vote on this one, or did you want to talk about well, I guess let's talk quickly about maneuvering on the site. Do you think they have enough space based on their what their anticipated amount of trucks coming in and out? They'll need a variance for the size of these loading areas. Do you think that's an issue?
What's the other side of the building look like?
I think the parking lot maneuverability is the lesser of the concerns.
So maybe we don't even get there. You said there's bigger loading dock over here. There's an error. Been having trouble with my Google Maps.
I mean, in any case, I would agree that I don't think that's the major concern here.
So if we were to adjust our maneuverability, that's probably fine. Obviously, there's more to the story. I just want to make sure we have a detailed feedback. So do we have enough for a motion? And I guess the group needs to decide if so it sounds like we're heading towards a denial, but do you want to go down the route of if you could partner with someone for commercial or not? So you guys can discuss that amongst yourselves.
That's the route I would go. I think all the other stuff, all the other items are directly related to that. So if they were to modify their proposal to have mixed use, that would impact the transparency. It would also impact the parking. So it would have a direct relation to the other concerns that they currently have with their design.
I guess I would just be concerned, and while I'd like that to happen, like I'd be concerned that because it's not their business model, that their response, say, to the ZBA would be that well, we are not in the business of doing that sort of thing, and that would be the reason why the ZBA lets them off the hook for a use that doesn't belong here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know how that would actually play out, but that's just a concern.
Can we do something along the lines of denied with the condition that they should consider mixed use?
We can, but Kevin, you're saying that you think that that's not possible. So should we go down? That's kind of what you were saying.
I guess I was looking at it though. Sorry, Kevin.
No, go ahead, Matt.
We're not saying approved and consider mixed use. We're saying denied and consider mixed use. Does ZBA not care?
Yeah, I don't know enough about how they typically handle this sort of thing, so I'll defer to you all on that. It was just, I'm kind of trying to picture this sort of small business that operates storage spaces all over the region or beyond, that the likelihood of them getting involved with as a commercial landlord is slim to none, even though that would be a way better design. So does that end up backfiring? I don't know.
So then they could choose to not do the project and you have steady state. You have the big parking area with or without trucks. But honestly, I'm not convicted that this design is better than the parking lot with trucks.
I was gonna say, Jim, sometimes it's easier to start with a parking lot than start with a building, right?
Yeah, and I mean, somebody who did have mixed use in their sites as being of interest could do great things with that parcel.
It does have a lot of right-of-way access, Hayward on the back and this alley all the way throughout. So, I mean, obviously, we're not going to tell them to subdivide the parcel, but if the market was right, they could still have access to their building. And this could be, you know, a different development.
Right.
For what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, I think of Station 55 across the street. That's market rate housing, providing apartments that overlook our main railroad line. Like, who would have ever guessed that that would have been financially viable? And it's been a huge success.
Right.
And that just speaks to the character and the potential of Railroad Street. So I don't know how that could play out in the future, but if somehow that front part of the parcel were to be sold off for something else, you know, that would be the better scenario, obviously.
I think going back to
please.
like talking about the condition that Matt was talking about, if it was denied, I think it's good to take a public stance like that as a committee, but I don't know what the drawbacks of that could be. I think denied with, you know, recommendation of mixed use integration to the development.
So it gives, you know, it makes it seem more reasonable, right, Chris?
Yeah.
I would support that. I mean, maybe they'll surprise us and suddenly see the opportunity that the street is telling them is there and which they're not recognizing. You know, I mean, what, 10 years ago, this wasn't all going on, right? It really is something notable. So I guess, Chris, I would support a motion that's denied with a recommendation that they consider a mixed use development instead, which maybe could incorporate storage somehow, but I don't know. What do you professionals think?
I'm looking to others too.
You want to make that the motion?
I'll make
Someone else should make the motion. There you go.
or I'll second it. Chris can make it and I'll second it.
No, you should make the motion, James.
I can claim the motion. I think I made it.
Matt's originally. I kind of stole it from him.
Okay, and then do you want to add anything about the design recommendation to increase transparency, or it's fine? I know we're kind of in the middle here, but it's good to have some comments on the current design too.
I guess I don't fully understand that part. So if we say, so let's say hypothetically, we just made the motion to deny. Would we still make recommendations about transparency and stuff like that? Or would ZBA just say PRC denied it?
Well, let's say that ZBA disagrees with you about the use. Are you fine with this exact building as proposed? Or let's say they added commercial. Should these windows be exactly as proposed? So it's kind of like if this, then that. So there's more than one route, I guess.
It seems to me that if they added commercial, that would already impact the design. So it's hard to speculate on that, I guess.
Are you saying that it would be like, that's a new application, so it's hard to deny something with a recommendation that what you're recommending would be a new application in its entirety?
If it were to change in that way, it would be a new application. I guess I'm more saying if ZBA disagrees with this recommendation, do you still want to provide feedback on the design? If
Yeah,
ZBA
so-
says the
so
use is
Tom,
fine,
If they overrule, what's our fallback position, right?
right?
So
Do you
I-
want more transparency?
Yeah,
or
I
keep
think
us-
we could ask for more transparency. I think we could ask for a better strategy for what you see through the transparency than what's been proposed, the red overhead doors inside. I think the overall mass of the building should reflect the more modular structural approach of the concrete frame building, which is most of the building, the existing building. There is the little wood part with the sloped roof. And, you know, I guess I can suck it up and accept the red corner if they really want to do that. The popped up parapet on what I think is the west side there. I, you know, don't really think that's doing anything, honestly. If you had a strong modular structural expression, even in IFAS, and if the increased transparency windows related to that, it would be a much stronger design than this.
Yeah, I agree with that. It just seems like it needs to be a more honest design if it's going to be a storage building, and the elements that are in there now, the sort of cartoonish windows and the parapet are there, and her suggestion that they would add a skyline mural or something like that. To me, that, not that I would be opposed to a mural being added, but to me, those collectively are just kind of apologizing for being what it is.
Right.
And we don't necessarily want a design that's apologizing. We want an honest design about what it is, if it's even allowed.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
in a way, instead of the fake corridor, which is dead end, that shows the red doors, they could do blinds, you know, like the Mama-san. They could do blinds into storage space or something. It really wouldn't matter from the street. But if you had windows that were like the windows in the Webster location, in that old part of the storage building there, which are full width in between the vertical expressions of structure, that's just much simpler and much stronger than this. You're not going to pay much more, if any. So you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4. You'd probably have 4 or so expressed bays across this elevation of the building on the south. And then you just have 4 or 5 windows in those bays. Maybe 4 windows, and then you've got the exit stair at the other end with a window, who knows? Just much simpler and cleaner.
Are there other thoughts, or does everyone agree with that? We can kind of turn that into a more simplified recommendation, I think.
So I'm just going to repeat what I heard only since I'm writing the recommendation. You are advocating for like a complete redesign in terms of like the massing of the building, and you want it to reflect the surrounding circumstance, that concrete building.
Yeah, it's not really a massing change. It's a facade treatment change, Anna. And you can do it in IFAS easily. I mean, you just have more insulation that makes it look like it's a concrete frame building, and then you cover it with the IFAS. So it's easy to do.
So it's recommended denial as proposed. The first recommendation would be based on the allowable uses in the district and the other activity on the street. The committee feels that a mixed use building, you know, with commercial or office on the first floor towards Railroad Street would be more appropriate. And then another recommendation is kind of more targeted towards this design with kind of all the items that Jim was talking about.
One more question, Tom.
Sure.
If they did propose a mixed use, let's say it's still 3 stories, first floor commercial, second and third floor, basically the footprint, the floor plan that they're proposing for self-storage. Does that change anything as far as what variances they would need? Or it's still not permitted because it's self-storage?
I believe they would still need the variance, but they're kind of getting, not necessarily thumbs up, but, recommendation from this group.
We would be saying because you met the intention or better met the intention.
Yeah, addressing kind of more of the concerns.
I'm probably pushing my luck with this or maybe splitting hairs, but in the recommendation to consider first floor commercial, could we say or partner with a developer that can do that kind of a program? Or is that too fine grained for this kind of
So this
recommendation?
would be like the same thing, wouldn't they, Kevin?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm saying if we just say add first floor commercial and the response is going to be, no, we don't do that. But if we put in or partner with a developer that does that kind of thing, it kind of pushes them a little bit more to like not be so quick to a no, but
I see what you're saying.
explore something. It might be still totally unrealistic, but I don't know if that helps it a little.
Those comments are helpful for the zoning board to understand also where this committee is coming from, I guess, too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because we're not going to say like you have to find first floor commercial. We would certainly be open to them subdividing off that property and selling it to somebody that would do mixed use.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
can
a
that
great
be sort
point.
of incorporated into the recommendation? I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, do we have enough to vote? Okay, so Chris is not going to vote on this one. This is his site plan. Anna's gonna vote on this one. So I'm just gonna go down my line on my screen. So Jim, based on the motion on the table.
Yes.
Kevin,
Wait, you're saying yes to deny.
Yes.
With
But
condition.
wouldn't it be, but what's being, okay, never, I'm not gonna get involved. I always get tripped up with this on CTC. I'll just let you continue.
we're more casual.
Okay.
Kevin,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Matt,
Yep.
and Anna.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will write up those recommendations and share them with the applicant and the zoning board. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we will possibly see you next week if we have some cases to review. Thanks.